All right, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. It is a nice, brisk October day. Where I'm at, it was very cold today. I needed to turn my heat on, but I got a problem with my chimney. I couldn't do it. It's kind of a bummer. So I've been wearing sweaters all day, chilling with the dogs. You guys, I have some incredible guests tonight, and I hope that you're ready for this. First of all, filmmaker John Paul Rice. An honorable man in Hollywood. That's all I'm going to say about that. We'll talk to him in a few moments. And then in the second hour, we've got Nick Noe and Sgt. William Kotel here to talk about a couple different topics. Benghazi and Operation Red October. What does that mean? Well, in today's world with our favorite Anon, October is supposed to be a big month, and they might have some information on it. We're going to be right back after a quick word from my sponsor, and we'll start the show. Now, if you visit any of the great tourist spots in America, everything looks peachy. The gamblers and shows in Las Vegas, the restaurants and theaters on Broadway, the galleries and bars in Chicago are full. But look a little closer, and all is not well. You can't fail to notice an uptick in homeless and street people out there, and that's how it started last time. If you speak to them, many of the older folk were ordinary people who fell victim to the banks in their last crash in 2008, foreclosure and bankruptcy, and they've never recovered. They didn't want to be there, but they borrowed up to their limits, and when it all went wrong, they found themselves destitute and on the streets. The signs are all there that this is happening again right now. Car loans are at an all-time high, credit cards getting maxed out, and house prices and mortgage lending are skyrocketing. But just like last time, and the time before that, the stock market was overvalued and wobbling. Trust me, you're not going to want to be there when it all comes crashing down again, because the next one will take your savings with it. You need to put a precious metals safety net of gold or silver under those savings to protect them. Gold and silver are low-risk assets, and you can cash out again when the danger has passed. So talk to one of the specialists over at Noble Gold today and see how they can help you protect your family for what's coming. Click the link below to get the free gold guide or call 877-646-5347 and tell them Red Pill 78 sent you. Or you can check them out at noblegoldinvestments.com. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My guest, John Paul Rice, is with us tonight. We've got lots of Patriots in the audience, going on 600 people. Please help us by liking and sharing this broadcast, you guys. Certainly do appreciate it. I'd like to ask everyone to please welcome my guest, John Paul Rice. How are you today, sir?
Hey, RP. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm doing great today.
It's my pleasure. Definitely. So, like I was saying, you are an honest man in Hollywood. Are you actually in Hollywood, or are you just at an undisclosed location in California?
No, I'm right here in the heart of Ground Zero in LA.
It's got to be interesting.
Yep, sure is.
So, you and I started talking because you've got this new film out called A Child's Voice. It's a supernatural thriller. It deals with some really troubling topics, but things that must be looked at. And you can't really glaze over them. I mean, drug abuse, child trafficking, scary stuff. But it's actually happening around here. I want to know as much about that movie as we can. I want to talk about other films. But I wanted to know specifically with you, like, how did you become a filmmaker? I used to want to make movies when I was a kid. It was like a dream of mine. I was going to move to California, and then everything fell apart.
Oh, yeah.
Here I am.
Hey, man, you never know.
Not
We're
so
here
bad.
now. Future is wide open. But yeah, it was. I don't want to say it was an accident, but it was a series of events. I was in college, and Georgia State University in Atlanta. I grew up in the South, Georgia, Kentucky, born in Florida, but raised by Midwest parents, and so. I had done theater in high school, but I also played baseball, basketball, football, all throughout my youth. And I had gotten into sales, and I was going to school for business. And one of the electives available to me in my second year was the history of motion pictures. And so I took it, and I saw Citizen Kane, Casablanca, Sunset Boulevard, Grand Illusion, Jewels and Gems, several others. And we discussed theory and all sorts of things that I really just got me excited about art and creativity, because I'd always had an artistic background. And I just followed it to the next step, which was that professor had an acting class up in Marietta, Georgia, outside of downtown, and invited me to come up and shadow the class. I went there, did some readings, impressed him, and he coached and tutored me along until Remember the Titans came to Atlanta, Georgia, and he knew the casting director and got me an audition. I went out and I auditioned for the movie. 2 days later, I was called and said, "Do you want to be one of the Titans in the movie?" And I was like ecstatic and everything else and crazed. And I didn't know what it entailed, but they said, "Yeah, we're going to need you for like 2 months." And the rest, just one step after the other. I gave up pretty much everything in Atlanta to chase the dream, pack up my bags, $500 in my wallet and a credit card. And slept on a floor, all of that fun stuff.
So did you bother to finish college, or did you just go straight out to Hollywood?
Just straight out to Hollywood. I tried going to school the following year. Just was not, there was no passion in me anymore.
No, why would there be?
I had stars in my eyes, and I was getting national commercials, did a Toys R Us commercial, did some independent films in Atlanta. And then when I got out to LA, I got an agent and a manager, and I was working on a Mel Gibson movie within the first 3 months. So it was like, yeah, I mean, it was just like there was a door or a path being either presented, and I was just following it. But I've stayed out here now for 19 years, and it turned into producing in about 2002, 2003, but really not until I did my first movie in 2008, my own produced movie. So anyway, that's kind of how I got into it. But the part of it that I never really knew that I had, because I had stars in my eyes all the way at the beginning. How could you not at 22, 23,
Sure.
But in thinking about it, it was unknown what I would end up doing now. Like, this was not planned at all. So it was a series, actually, funny as enough, it's a series of misfortunes of not getting to make that bigger movie with the bigger name and the bigger star, that led me on this path that I'm on now, which is, in retrospect, is far more fulfilling than having gone into Hollywood to try to become a star, unaware of the fact that all of the things that I've learned now and worse have been done to people for decades. And there is a dark element to it, a very dark element to it. It's not born out of Christianity or God, as far as the creator of light. And I'm not trying to be, I don't know, how do you say it? Like, not trying to be like, scare people about this.
No, John, we are all well aware of what goes on in Hollywood. Okay. All of us know the terrible things that, I'm going to ask you your casting couch story, because I'm sure there's got to be something dark there.
Yeah, no, I have plenty of them. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that you reflect on that you like. Here's the thing. This is how it all works. Because people ask, like, how does it work that you can impress upon young people coming out there for their art and their craft, which many of them do, or have convinced themselves that they are. Let's be fair. I mean, for every one of those people, the bad people, there are hundreds or dozens of more people like me out here.
Exactly.
You just don't see and hear from us because we're not promoted in their ecosystem.
Right.
Okay. So I, being unaware of most of this stuff when I was younger, knew that there was a perverse element to it when I was 22, 23. And I didn't know any of this stuff, because the entry level is just that you will give up your rear end or your mouth for a role, because that's what they do. Yeah. And I mean, the thing, and if people don't understand, at the highest level, they do yachting, which, I mean, is that's like the play level stuff, where there's a billionaire overseas who's going to finance their next slate of films, and he wants to F a starlet, and walk a red carpet. You got to go play ball for 2 weeks, walking around with him and doing what he wants. And then there's people that import, Hollywood stars overseas to do yacht parties and all of that and the like. And And it goes on all over the world. But it totally fits with the material world, which is godless.
Yes. Yes.
In their image, it's godless. In our image, the material world would be something quite different. We're just not at that point yet where we realize, or we turn that on in our brains, that the darkness needs darkness in order to manifest in the three-dimensional world. It needs a host. It needs you to be weak. It needs you to be addicted. It needs you to be without love in order for it to take over and get you to do things that you would never wish upon your worst enemy. It gets you to do things that you, if you knew where you were going, you would never do that. Even as a child, you would never do that. When you look at the messaging on the political end, and when we're talking about human trafficking of children and the realities of that, just by UNICEF's numbers alone, 5.5 million children every single year, 98% of which don't live beyond the age of 7 years. So that means they need to replenish the stock and the crop.
Yep.
And if the political party's message of a particular group that they identify with today, not what it always was, but what has been corrupted from within on a facade, a brand, that they are essentially hateful of all life on this planet. And human trafficking is the sole murder of the child. And you don't come out of that, like you don't do and engage in behavior at such a level and degree, using people and thinking that there's no consequence to the action, that you're justified in what you're doing because it's your right.
It seems to me like these people kind of exist within like a unique ecosystem. They feel that they have the right to do this. They feel entitled to be able to do this, to, cause this incredible suffering, this narcissistic glee with which they prey on children and prey on the weak, because it's a moneymaker. And because I think there's a spiritual aspect to it. I think that, that soul death, I think that they are drawing power from the death of these children. I think it has so many different layers. And I think that when people initially get it, come to it from the outside, child trafficking, children are being sold, but like, why? It's a business and it's a religion. It's so much that's going on here with this.
All the filth of the world comes from this system. It's a satanic system. It's a child abuse system.
Yeah.
And the reason why, and here's all you got to ask yourself. There's just a couple of things I tell people to do. Look at the messaging and then go outside and look around you, what's in front of you, what's around you. You notice any difference? What they message to you is anger, fear, hatred, rage, disillusionment, frustration, helplessness. And then they'll give you a little puppy here and there, or a little heartwarming story over there to keep you, nourished. But the reality is that all of this is done to pull you away from what you truly are, your true and full potential of a human being. And I want to say this because this happened to me over the last several months, but my background as a child, the reason why you have artists out there is because there is abuse. The kind of artists that we have today is because of abuse. There has always been, now, there are going to be people who disagree with it, and they can, in their own mind, argue that no, my childhood was good. Fine. I'll take it on your face value that in your reality, that works for you. But I'm just going to tell you this. It's a very dangerous way of fossilized thinking, to think that your reality and what you went through is the only truth there is for everybody else out there. Because everybody is a unique individual. Everyone has a unique childhood. Everyone has different parents from the next house alone, not even just between the two of each other. And when you have child abuse, you have people that don't live in the present. Their minds are in the past of the fear and the terror and the worry, and it affects and clouds their future, which is why they get stuck. And then what happens is they raise children between two people who really don't love each other, They say they love each other, but what they're doing is they're looking at the other person, and what they're doing is they're projecting their own needs into that person of what they think that person can give them. And then they call that love if the person gives it to them. The problem with that is there's no spirituality behind it. And not that you have to believe in spirituality, but I'll give you this. What that is, what that negative result that's coming because you're projecting your needs onto somebody else for the love that you want inside, that's your ego. And the rule of your ego is that it needs to feed on negativity. It has demands and demands that have to be continually fed and increased in their consumption in order to be right emotionally. Negative in the sense that you feel better than somebody because you have the iPhone 10, you've got a nice apartment, you have a nice job, you have nothing to do with soul, nothing to do with spirituality, nothing to do with your own self-worth, the love in your heart, what's in between your two ears. It's all a facade. This is why television is so powerful and hypnotic.
Yeah. Because
it's a trusted voice. I learned this about the subconscious mind, and I know I'm kind of going a little bit, but I want to expand this.
Keep going.
The subconscious mind, there are 7 rules to the subconscious mind. 2 of them are this. Number 1, subconscious mind controls 90 to 95% of all of your thoughts that you think on a daily basis every single day of your life. That's 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 90 to 95% of those are all subconscious programs. The number 2 reason that that's a very important fact is the fact that the subconscious mind does not determine what is or is not. There is no decision making in the subconscious mind at all. None. The third thing is that the subconscious mind does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. So fears that are imagined in people are as real to them in the present moment of the experience that they're having as your reality is to you when you're calm and don't feel that there are any threats around you. But the person right next to you feels there's a threat.
Yes.
Okay? But here's the really dangerous one, and this is how these people have worked for so long, and I don't really want to call them people because they're not human beings. And let me say this, they don't view us as human beings.
Right.
And they don't put a value on us at all other than commodification. Yeah. That is the truth. There is no hesitation in these people. None. They can say it. They can say what they say. They can feel what they feel. They can believe what they believe. But how they actually live their lives and the code that they go by has nothing to do with the language that they are projecting outward to anybody of any sort, nor do you have a concept of your average day and their average day is nothing like yours. Nothing.
I believe that.
Not just because of luxuries and riches. So I know I say a lot and it's pretty dense, but I'm not offering hopelessness, because at the finality of it all, the only way that any of evil can exist in the world is if we consent to it.
It's very true.
And so what I would invite people to think about is, how do you liberate yourself in a way that frees your mind from the negativity of the material world? How it entices you to keep coming back. Pornography's logical conclusion is incest. Because that's where it comes from.
Oh, I totally agree with you there. Let's dive into that deep in a moment. I need to do a couple of thank yous to the audience. Jeff Stewart said, "Where we go, when we go all," and the Green New Deal is a cookbook. I like that. Yep. Twilight Zone reference. Also says, "Hello, everybody. Yes, I meant to shout." Warwolf said, "God bless you, brother. You are the news." Thank you very much for that, Warwolf. Laura Thompson said, "I never miss a show. Thank you for all you do, RP." Thank you very much for that, Laura. Germ T shows a clown and then says, "I'm not a crook." So do we have some infiltrators in the audience tonight? Ben Schwagel says, RP78, the people he is describing, these are the serpent seed I keep talking about. He's absolutely right. These are the lineage of Cain. They hate us and they want us all dead. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with this concept of the serpent seed?
No, but I mean, I'll probably have heard a version, but I'd love to hear what you know, because
Uh,
I'm still a newbie at all of this.
it's not much. I was only introduced to it last week by my viewer here, Ben Schwagel. But okay, so yes, pornography is a complete and total destruction of our moral fiber. So you're saying the logical conclusion is incest? Yeah, I mean, basically, they've taken it to such an extreme. Like anything, any segment of pornography that you can think of, they now produce. And a lot of it will turn your stomach if you're a self-respecting person. But please continue.
I mean, the upside down nature of all of this is in when we're talking about kids and we're talking about teenagers even. I mean, teenagers, some people can say, well, older men, yeah, they like younger kids. Okay, whatever, fine. I'm not going to make a technical argument about that and say where it's worked and where it hasn't worked and where it's been in history and where just whatever, fine. We're talking about innocent babies and people who see them as lunch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And those people have the power over the banking systems and the war systems and all of the powers of the world to implement their destruction into the world.
Yes.
And what they want to do is pervert God's creation of sex and love and beauty and divine connection. I used to watch porn all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It effed up my relationships. But then again, pornography did not do anything more to me than I had been done to me. It was just it was a re-traumatization of the childhood trauma that I had.
Yeah.
And I just happened to thankfully be a little bit more aware about it, but not even the awareness of it came to me until I let go of the traumas of my body and began to heal my body, truly heal my body.
In my personal experience, I read an article some years ago. I don't remember when, but they did a study on people watching pornography and its effects on your brain, and they found that it stimulates the exact same pleasure centers in your brain as if when you're taking illicit drugs. And on top of that, all of the damage that it can do, it ruins people's expectations. It takes away anything special that exists with sex with someone that you love, and it just completely destroys people's minds. So I'll be first to say here that it's not a good thing, and they've made it as easy to get as a pack of gum at the corner store. It's I mean, I've often thought that the introduction of the internet into everybody's homes, is just an easy way to destroy Western society because they can just push porn to everybody. You've got kids, small children watching it, and it sexualizes them early, and it gets them ready for this system that we're talking about.
Yes, because children are in a hypnotic state when they're watching that. Even teenagers are. First 7 years of your life, 90% of your brain is on delta theta waves, which is sleep and pre-sleep meditative state.
Yep.
So the kid is just taking it all in and it is ingesting it, but not processing it like you and I would through our filters of experience and growing up and maturity and deciding what really works for us and doesn't. It's just they're mirroring that behavior. I've been working with people who are in the social work field, and they tell me about these child abuse cases. And I mean, it's real stuff. This is going on in people's homes by the millions everywhere. This is not just happening in a faraway place. And I want to impart this to the people listening tonight, because it's really important that we understand, or at least begin to stretch ourselves outside of this reality TV show that is being taken down by the #1 TV show host in the world. That's essentially what he is doing. He's bringing the show to an end so that we can turn and move into a new time. And I mean, I'm seeing the writing on the wall. If you take a look at today's current political environment, you just simply know it's totally chaotic, and that if the Democrats ever get control back, we're all done for.
Everything.
I mean, there's no walking this back.
No, it will be so swift and in automatic. Everything that's been accomplished in the last 3 years will be undone like that, and you will see this country slide so quickly down the hill.
It's unbelievable. I just look at it as the fact that we're here to talk about this now and can is a big deal.
No, it's a win.
3 years into a Hillary Clinton presidency, I don't think that would be even a.
No, I would have expected to be in shackles.
Yeah. But I want to say that the beauty of life is here, and heaven on earth is really a concept that we need to start exploring more. This is being talked about in science with Dr. Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden. It even comes a little bit from Dwyer, but he was more in the Tao. But I'm not talking just solely Christianity. I'm talking about a revival of spirituality, because we're not in the and people that are a little hesitant to this, they're like thinking in the religious sense. Although I would say that my own personal experience, Christianity, at least for me, is the logical conclusion of spirituality in terms of the teachings of Jesus Christ, the concept of God beyond the words of the Bible, but in the context of our knowledge and our awareness of the cosmos, black holes, powers and principalities and all of these things that we kind of have scaled down to our little human selves. But what we don't really understand yet is the full power and potential of our being, because we're seeing each other this way through this reality. But we haven't yet taken it up to the next level, which I will propose what that means in the first step. There is what Ronald Bernard, who inspired A Child's Voice, told me about the light inside of you. There is a light that never goes out. And it can be in what he calls the atomic bunker, right? Mm. And that atomic bunker is for people like me and others. We have survived untold horrors. Obviously, you can compare yours to the next person to the next and say, well, it wasn't that bad. But still, there are consequences.
It's equally damaging, yeah.
Yes, it's all equally damaging, and it prevents you from connecting to your spirit and your soul. And that's where your ego can then take over, because the material world has everything for your ego to hate, everything for your ego to feel great about at the expense of somebody else.
Yeah.
And it gets you away from connection and away from the planet. So there, I guess for the movie people, this is how I kind of condensed it. In Star Wars, in the original trilogy, there is a light and a dark side. Mm-hmm. And what the light side does is it never acts out in aggression or attacks. It only lifts its lightsaber to defend. And the purpose of that is that the first attack is always out of aggression. And aggression is usually from some form of fear, anger, hatred, which can lead down to the dark side, right? Mm-hmm. But in the Bible, it talks about the meek shall inherit the earth. And in Greek, meek is translated to those who sheathe the sword, those who withhold the sword.
Okay.
Rather than those who use the sword to pillage and plunder and take. And so the sword is there to defend. And who the meek are the people who have walked in the dark and now into the light, which means that those are the children, the ones that are abused, who have had lived experiences, are the most valuable to come forward and start speaking at this time, because that is part of the Great Awakening, is the child in each and every one of us to fulfill our true destiny as far as what we were born to uncover at this time in the mystery of life, that we are, when you take all of the background radiation and measure it from the beginning of the Big Bang to now. This was done at MIT and has been replicated over and over again. They modeled the background radiation of the entire universe, not the galaxy, the entire universe. They found a hot area and a cold area. They found another hot area on the other side and another cool area. So it was all balanced. And at the very center of this model of the background radiation of the entire history of the universe sat planet Earth. We're at the center of the universe, according to MIT. When I got into what this time means and what these people are and what they're trying to bring into this reality that we live in. They want to destroy God's creation. They do that in their reproductive rights.
Yep.
To expand, not to reduce, to expand the number. And then you look at Epstein tied to MIT, Silicon Valley,
Harvard.
And I would offer that the people go to edge.org before they shut it down and archive it. That is Jeffrey Epstein's organization, and all of the people on there, they've scrubbed some of them off, although you can find some in the Wayback Machine or archived. He was on there. Marina Abramovich is on there.
Yes.
Jeff Bezos is on there. Paul Allen is on there. This is all the who's who of every single industry in bio, tech, whatever. These people view all of us as useless creatures. They said that on that website, that young human beings are among the most useless creatures in all of the animal kingdom.
That's so disgusting.
You're less than rats. Your children are less than rats to these people, these academics. Jeffrey Epstein, when he was debriefing his subjects who were trafficked to these people, one of them was beaten so badly she could barely walk. And his response was, "You get that sometimes."
Cool.
Ghislaine Maxwell was said to go into the trailer parks of West Palm Beach and pick up those kids. And when asked about those girls and those teens, she said, "They're trash. They're nothing."
Was this in the documents that were revealed from the Virginia Jeffrey information?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the articles, the subsequent articles after that were written. But I read that direct quote as one of the last. That quote actually got a headline in a couple of them. But yeah.
Real quick, I just need to do a couple of quick thank yous. Dr. B says, awesome guest. He's spot on. We need to bring you back. I already know because we're halfway through the hour.
Oh, wow.
Ben Schwagel says, refer to Zen Garcia and Aaron Moffat. Yes, of course, Ben Schwagel, for more info on the serpent seed as described in the Aramaic translation of the Hebrew texts 2,500 years ago. Aaron Moffat is doing an interview recorded not live with Zen Garcia on serpent seed on Tuesday. Not sure when it will be uploaded. I'll be checking it out. Patricia Furlong says Doctors Joe, Lipton, and Braden, and then Hearts. So Patricia's a fan. Jeff Stewart says RP78 has the most amazing guests. That's very true. And Ben Schwagel says, yes, Aramaic translation says we are the center of everything and is very descriptive of the creation of the flat earth. Something to think about.
Yes, that's the other part that freaked me out.
I can't buy into the flat earth. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Well, I will say this. I'm not here to try to sell anybody, but I've been on a really intense journey, and I could say it's unique to my own experience, but I've been in a meditative state for over 6 months, almost every single day. I take a look at what science tells me, what physics tells me, and physicists overwhelmingly say if there is intelligent life out there, we are almost certain a simulation.
Yes, I've definitely seen that before. Here's the thing about science and physics, though. I think that it's been stunted. It's been stunted, and we've only been given so much information. There's all these things that have been kept quiet. We've been kind of misled down the paths. I don't know if you were familiar with the electric universe theory. I was getting at that earlier. But there's a YouTube channel called Thunderbolts, and I think it's thunderbolts.org is their website. But they explain the universe from the perspective that it's this electric theory model as opposed to other scientific theories. But I think the only thing that I'm certain of is that we've been lied to about a lot of things. Yeah. And that, whatever science says, I'm still going to do some research and try to find additional answers to it. But I think that, it's like the best propaganda. It's truth within a lie, within truth, within a lie.
Yes,
it's like a rotten onion. You got to unpack it.
You have to keep coming back to the matrix.
Yes, exactly. And then we're probably in a simulation, so let's just.
You and I are talking like way across space and time right now. Yep. Like, hey, neighbor. How's it over there on your planet?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I'm living on it, you know?
No, it's a wild time, and I think that we're gonna find out. AI, all this stuff in the hands of these people, for sure, they want to turn this off.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's all about, I think, ending procreation, like, for the sake of, like, family and love. It'll only be for, like, business. You know, I mean, you know, they're pushing the idea of us dating AI and robots, you know, dolls. I did a show on AI last night. TikTok sent me this video of this AI streamer. I think it's like AI Angelica or something like that. It sounds like a real person, and it's in like a computer animated body, and she's on chat roulette. So just like chatting with random people throughout the world, the AI itself is going and seeking out communication with people. And, you know, I mean, you could not tell from listening to it that it was a computer simulation. It sounded like it was an animation, but a person must have been controlling it. But that's not what it was. It was freaky. So then people fall in love with robots, and then they stop having children, you know, unless they want to do it, you know, because they're going to sell it or something like that, you know? I mean,
it's like this, like people, here's how I say the conspiracy theory stuff, because, you know, oh, it's agenda this, and it's like, and I go, yeah, sure. Try selling that to somebody who doesn't understand it. Right. What you do is you say, follow this path to its logical conclusion. How could it go wrong?
Yeah.
In the hands of people like Jeffrey Epstein, who he was connected with. How could it go wrong in the hands of people like that who think about these things with children? That's where we're going with this, because if we don't go this direction, if we don't go in this direction of transparency in a time where it's totally attainable, or at least have some kind of equilibrium to get bad people out that are there, they can't become entrenched and bring their entire army of people into the structures of power so that they could bring their sociopaths and psychopaths in, you know, to take over the structure again. You can't have that. Otherwise, in the future, we're all going to die. They're going to have so much control, they will be able to kill you with a switch. They don't need to come to your door and get your guns.
Right.
They'll be able to beam something into your head. I know that sounds so far-fetched.
Oh, no, it's here today, though.
I mean,
it's clearly here today.
This is like, oh, you know, it's like the cognitive dissonance thing. It's like, well, you know, holding two. It's like, no, guy, look, these are the people all attached to these people. And then they own all of these companies. And this is what they're telling you. And they're telling you who to hate. And they're telling you this. And they're telling you what to believe. It's like, okay, the news media doesn't just lie to you about this and then tell you the truth about global warming.
No.
That's what they do. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it's all lies. It's all lies. Real quick, Code Red Do Girl Kimmy said, I am never disappointed with your show, RP. So much truth being spoken here. Hard truths, but so worth the journey. God bless. God bless you as well, and thank you for that. And Ben Schwagel said, tell 99 small truths to sell one big lie. Satan's Handbook, Electromagnetic Effect, can explain all of our physics, including gravity.
Oh, dude, I want to check it out. This guy's like deep into the encyclopedia.
He'll keep them coming, too.
I love it. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. I hope somebody's getting something out of it.
Well, so how did you, now we started following each other, like before I was even Red Pill 78. So this was like when I was a different name. I'm not even going to say what it was, but, and I started following you because you were talking about child trafficking. This was back, it was 2015, I'm pretty certain, because I think we were both doing research on a certain Italian food with, there was I'm not going to say a fence, Italian food fence. Just put it together, guys. It starts with a P and then a G, and we can't say the word on YouTube. So all that information was coming out in leaks from the DNC stuff and JP. And so that's how I saw you. And then, you know, and that just continued on from there. And so how did you get started on making films about child trafficking? Like how did that look?
The Tracking up to 2016, I was still in the wonderful illusion of the Democrats. I knew that Obama was kind of, a disappointment. And I believe the right wing news label on a lot of things, so I ignored all the crimes, didn't know anything about it. But I knew that Hillary Clinton was corrupt, and I fell in love with the authenticity of Bernie Sanders without understanding socialism or communism. But he was also, back then in 2015, he was an economic populist more than anything else.
Right.
Completely changed. I mean, if he took his message out now in 2015, 2016, he wouldn't have had a chance.
No.
And it is what it is. But I followed that, and I come from a banking background and an analyst background, and I wrote a program with a guy. Actually, I worked with a guy to conceptualize a program of what I wanted, and I found that they were rigging the election during the Democratic primary. Like, he was winning 70% of the vote in almost every single state. There were millions of votes deleted in New York City. 1.3 million. I know that there are statisticians out there that said, no, that's not true. I said, well, you can't argue the numbers in all of 2008 to 2016 comparatively. It's ridiculous. You'd have to believe that this was the miracle of all miracles, that it just so happened to be a populist election. The guy outraised her in donations of $200 or more by $100 million. Okay, and so that was a crushing blow, right?
Right.
But I had no clue. I had no clue what I was about to get into. And then election night happened, and I was freaked out. I had a girlfriend at the time who was Muslim and Arab. She told me, "Don't worry about it. You're like freaking out for nothing." She said, "We all love him. We think he's great." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking?" And I didn't know anything about it because I had bought, I still had the Stockholm syndrome of like, they did this to Sanders, but they're not doing it to Trump, right?
Yeah. Sure, of course. They'll only do it to people on their own side.
Right. And so I believed all the tropes and everything else just because I was ignorant. I didn't look into it. Then he got elected, and I freaked out, thought I was going to have to get to Australia. All sorts of crazy. Yeah, I know. Like I remember calling people like, no, you're going to have to get a passport. You're going to have to. It was so great. And then I started listening to Alex Jones and Robert David Steele. And, I didn't know where to start. I just started somewhere.
Sure.
And I definitely was hearing people talking positively about this situation. And all the racist stuff and all that, I was like going, well, these guys aren't racist. I mean, Alex Jones talking about MLK and like what a beautiful message it was. Like, hey, that's a really kind of perverse way to say. But the thing is that I didn't even know about the character assassination. It doesn't matter whether they do it to everybody who's telling you truthful things. They assassinate their character. They imprint your brain so that no matter whether the information is true or not, it doesn't matter, which gets back to the trust issue, which bypasses your subconscious mind. Anybody who you trust goes right into your subconscious mind. It does not matter.
Yep.
It does not matter who they are. If you trust them, they can just, whatever they say will not go through your normal filters if it was a stranger.
Right.
And so then I understood. But the human trafficking thing, he blew a hole into reality. I decided to look behind that curtain. I actually wasn't as critical or even, I heard about the Pizzagate. I didn't know about it. I just listened to some YouTube at the time. But I went back and looked at it and I said, okay, this is Elephantis's Instagram, and this is what the New York Times is reporting.
Yep. Talk about cognitive dissonance.
80% of the whole thing over here, like you go, oh, let me show you what the owner posted on this child here and what all the subsequent comments were. And if you go to their accounts, you'll find out that they're doing kind of weird things with children. Don't you think, do you think that these people should be around children? Should they be babysitting children?
Right. Is that normal to post a picture of a baby and 20,000 euros and a bottle of Xanax? I mean, that's not what normal people do, I mean, like, I never would post anything about that with somebody else's child, like look at this baby.
Yeah. It's public. People can see it. Adults who have different ideas about children could look at that. I mean, that's either total lack of self-awareness or you're a really creepy son of what.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, then Ronald Bernard, Anake Lucas, Then came other testimonies, the Franklin scandal, Many Sleepless Nights, not a book, just me personally, and Edgar. And then we said, we got through it and we said, no, this is going to be our next project. We're going to do a movie which tells the truth. We're going to incorporate SRA. We're going to show it, but we're not going to glorify it or make it gory. What we wanted to do was to make a movie that was the supernatural, but it really was the soul and the beauty of the love in the child calling out for help, awakening that in two people, one who's a homeless heroin addict and the other a battered girl who's seeking out her mother, who she believes is alive and didn't leave her. Yeah. And her boyfriend starts selling kids for cash, kidnapping them.
Yep.
But he's part of a network. And they get entrapped in this network, but the journey is to save this girl's life, and really it comes full circle in saving the child and saving the child. The child can live again when people love each other enough to stand up in the face of that horror on behalf of the child that they don't know.
A selfless act.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's a beautiful film. You guys, it's available to watch on Amazon. If you've got Prime, you can go watch it right now. It is available for sale, right, in iTunes? Yes?
No, we have it on Vimeo on demand for
Vimeo.
Worldwide.
Okay.
There's rental and download. And I just want to say this to anybody, whether you have Prime, this, that, and the other. If the film moves you in such a way, share it with someone. I don't mind that if you buy the film for $9.99 on Vimeo and share it with dozens of people, I don't care. I want as many people to see this movie as possible, as just another connecting point from a person who's in Hollywood, who 3 years ago did not know any of this stuff and went down. And if you had told me 3 years ago that this is where I would be, I would have thought you were out of your mind, because I didn't know there was another world out there. And part of the reason why I didn't is because that prison was in me. That is the whole point of this, is that the liberation of the child is the spoken love of the promise to help them. Because without that, if you want to help today, if you want to get involved and help somebody today, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to a charity, although I would recommend a few. Ark of Hope for Children is one of the best out there. They work directly with survivors. Blair Corbett and his wife are amazing people. He has helped cure dissociative disorder from satanic abused children.
Oh, wow.
Which they use EFT through the internet, using EFT, which is a motion freedom technique. It is something that everybody should learn about.
Tapping. Yeah.
Tapping and the matrix re-imprinting. That's the other one. He was able to get that child out of its satanic personality, and the child has no more memory of it ever again.
That's amazing.
What it does is it releases the thought with the emotion from the past. It completely, it's like it will never be there ever again. And I can tell you this from my own personal experience, how much I've healed over this last year. I mean, it's been noticeable in my relationships. My creativity is up. I'm so much happier. It's like, if I'm going nuts, man, this is the best way to go nuts, because I feel great. But it's a new life, and it is possible. And I want to say that the people that are wanting you to believe it's not possible are the same people that give you no answers to solving your problems. They want you to come back to them for your problems so that they can profit off of you or control you greater. And that's the final thing. The founders of this country, the one thing that should stand out to everybody else is the founders of this country said, your rights as a human being to exist, your divine rights are given to you by God, the Creator, not a government.
Mm-hmm.
And that government that says that is one that is aware of its own consciousness, to know that mankind and human beings, as these spiritual beings that we are on this planet in this time, the divine right and the natural law come before all. Everything else is To take away natural law is to destroy God's creation, essentially, and cripple it so that it cannot fulfill its true purpose, which we are all here to do, which is to learn and heal ourselves as well as others. And get to a kid. There is a kid out there that just needs you to be there for it. It doesn't make any judgment of you because you're an adult. That child, and acting on behalf of that child, to play with that child, to listen to that child, to give your time to that child. You know, as a parent, I know as an uncle, how valuable that is. They take that with them for the rest of their lives. So don't think for one moment that no one is worthy of love or that things cannot change, because for certain in children, I would not be here today. I can promise you this. If it wasn't for my sister who protected me as a little baby from my father and stood up to him and said, if you ever do that to him ever again, I will beat the crap out of you. She was only 13 and he was an athlete. This is our calling at this time. Part of it is to get deeper into ourselves where we begin to heal. We stop looking outside for the answers to come. It will leave you, this world, in all, if all of what is true in Q, which I am more and more every day. I mean, it's confirmations, but not that I was always like, it was like Vegas, you don't put 100% on red.
I'm all in, baby.
On red, and on black, just in case, so you can, But I was always saying that, I told you this when we talked, it was an open source intel to begin with.
Yep.
What everybody else interpreted it to be or thought it to be, fine. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff was open source intel, just connecting the dots.
Yep.
And now we're seeing the results play out.
Absolutely.
But I'm saying this because if you don't use this time to heal yourself in whatever way you can by getting involved with people and being around people who care about each other, you will be left behind in the 20th century because all of that old programming is going away. We cannot live another day in a child abuse system where we have child rearing that is violent and does not put the child first. This is why women who champion reproductive rights.
We're already demonetized, so don't worry.
How long did it take?
Not long.
Okay. All right. It's a win. No, yeah. But I want to say this, is that the most important thing is that we need to come to an understanding that what creates that mentality for which someone believes and thinks that certain way about children and does not consider to feel the love of what it would mean to embrace that child. That picture I sent you, that Brazilian couple.
Yes.
You should put that up there and have people read that so that they can understand exactly what that is. Everything right there, what I'm talking about.
Right there. I've got that on screen. Real quick, I need to say a couple of quick thank yous. Oh, and just for a reminder, the guest is John Paul Rice, and the movie is a child's voice. I've already put it into the chat box, everything to watch the movie and get a hold of John. It's all in the description of this video, just below what you're watching. Let's see. Chris Hawkins said, got my hands in my engine, but had to take a minute to say thank you. Wow, my noodle is working overtime, double time right now. Thank you both to all the Patriots, and are we not living in amazing times? Blessings and amen. Thank you, Chris, and you're correct. Tanette Booth says the universe is toroidal, not flat. That is true. It actually is. Ben Schwagel said, what was the method called to heal the child? Can you post it in chat or description?
Yes.
Emotional freedom technique, and then what was the other one?
Matrix Reimprinting by Carl Dawson.
Matrix Reimprinting by Carl Dawson. Okay. And then my friend Lady Warrenon is here. How you doing, Lady Warrenon? And then Jay for Justice, thank you very much for that very generous super chat. He says, love this show, so important. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Madeline Anderson said, God bless you, Red Pill and MAGA. Thank you, Madeline. And then Blips just said 1111. Make a wish, guys. Make a wish.
Woo!
So we've got the photo of baby Antonella here. This is right after she was born. And as soon as she was born, she heard her father speak, and then she immediately smiled and when she looked at him, because she recognized him. She recognized the voice, and then she was like, oh my gosh, this is my dad. I'm seeing him for the first time, and I can remember him. We're conscious in the womb, you guys, you know? So when you interact with your baby like that, I mean, it's an incredible thing. And, you know, I think that that child, you know, you come out, and you realize that, you know, these two people, your parents, and that's so important to have both parents together, you know, like have a child for love, make a family, and raise them together. And it'll go a long way towards helping a child, you know, be well adjusted and not have to go through the, you know, the terror of having to overcome all of this, you know, pain that we are, you know, instilled with as we're growing up. You know, I mean, I've had terrible things happen to me too, John, you know? So, I mean, I know what you're talking about.
We all have. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, just take a pick, you know, of anything. We all have our story. The key is that we don't live our story from then to today.
Right.
And that there is a new, beautiful world that is available to us. Because I will say this, my journey is through the healing of my child abuse. So it was quite severe, and I had worked on it, and I didn't realize how dangerous it was of what I was in terms of how unaware I was. But Alice Miller's work, which is available on Amazon, I would highly recommend that. That is the truest truths that I've ever heard in my life. And she did those 40 years ago when she went against the establishment, and everyone in the psychiatric establishment just burned her. And she said, no, no, no. And I would just say this as an entry for anyone who wants to look at her work, go to The Roots of Violence on her website. There are 12 points, and read them out loud to yourself. And you'll find yourself nodding your head more often than ever before. But it lines up to that picture. When that man says, I thought I knew what a feeling of true love was until I looked at the most sincere smile in the world. It was there that I could be sure what love is, as seen through the eyes of God in the child, smiling back at him. That is our closest being on this planet that is born into this world, that is the closest being to God that we have access to.
Yes.
And we have to look at reconstructing our society, our social construction of our laws, and all of the work that we are going to do and manifest, not at the expense of humanity. You and I have 60 to 70 trillion cells in our bodies, all of which throughout the entire course of our lifetime, if we take care of it, none of those cells on their original program are in competition with anything in your body to take over. Mm-hmm. All of them live in harmony. This is the miracle that you are. And once you start to understand what that power is, it begins to resonate inside of you. You see how precious you are. You see how valuable you are in this time to come back to that mutual resonance, that cooperation that is already born inside of you, as witnessed in that smile of that baby. There is no concept of evil in that child. Mm-mm. You have to put it there. And you have to give it a material world to message to it in order to corrupt it. You get rid of the material world, you still have to deal with this abuse, but we can heal it much faster if the healing comes from within you. If you heal those traumas inside of you, I promise you this, to anybody who has been scared and afraid, you are the most precious thing right now in all the world, because you understand the danger and the damage of what evil can do. We are at a time where these kinds of conversations have to start happening in order to bring out the good and remind people once again what they are versus how they actually have been made to feel. And the true test of that is the fact that when they were children, they had the most severe abuse at the time that they were the most vulnerable and defenseless, and they did not kill themselves, and they are still alive today. And so there is nothing other than imagined fear from the past that can take your own life away today unless you let it. I had to cry a hell of a lot over the last several years. First, at what was being done to kids, because I had not dealt with my own issues, which doesn't mean as you as a parent or anybody else who hasn't dealt, is not crying for that, but it was crying for the child in me. And finally, I had to come into the child within me and rescue him and let him come out and play and let him come out and be the loving creature that he was born to be into this world under the light of God, and to shine that light in every corner possible so that darkness will be drawn in, cast further into the shadows, and all that fear that is around that darkness comes into the light, because that light is love in you and in me, and we're working in concert together to heal each other and take our humanity back into the direction of the Creator, to manifest life into this world, ethical banking systems, ethical ecosystems, ethical businesses. We don't have to change capitalism and destroy it in order to get this. It can be restructured to be more equilibrium and more fair. But that has to come with a rise in consciousness from us. You telling somebody else this who is emotion-based today and angry and hateful, they cannot hear what you're saying. But for the ones who can, who want to be helped, who want to learn, if our response, let me just say this, if our response is to mock those people, push them down, and tell them that they need to get in line with us, let me say this, after 2020, there is going to be a rise in Satanism. There's going to be a rise in hedonism. There's going to be a rise in nihilism, because people can't help how they feel. There's also going to be a rise in Christianity and spirituality. Spirituality can go any direction. But I will say this, if you believe, and I'm not talking about scripture or anything else, but if you believe in the light and dark, and you believe in the light of Jesus Christ, and you believe that Christ, at least in his act, his selfless act of shedding blood for all mankind, what a concept for humanity to know 2,000 years ago, to think about the creator of all heaven and earth coming down so that he could liberate his creation. That was, imagined or not, it doesn't matter. That is profound ideas and an ideology that transformed the entire history of the world.
Absolutely.
In spite of all of the imperfections, all the ways that they took down spirituality to condense it, to make you controlled. But when you look at the fundamental issue, human beings, as a result of horrors, come back even stronger. If they embrace loving values, cooperation, not fighting, not contention. All of those people who were like me, who are still like me today, that are not completely lost in the dark, because there are some, but the ones that are not need your help. They need our help, because if we don't help them, if we turn a blind eye to the ones that could listen, could change, because we haven't tried yet. If we don't bring them over to the truth and awareness so that they can begin to heal themselves, they will turn to the dark side.
They will. John, we're going to have to leave it there, bud, because my next two guests have arrived.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're okay. You're okay. I wanted you to finish with your point, because I do want to have you back on the show again, and a couple different people said we needed to give you 2 hours. I agree. We should probably have you back later on in the month, and we can continue this conversation. But thank you so much for being here tonight. Want to just remind everyone that if you want to get a hold of John, you can do that with the links in the description of this video. That will also show you how to get the movie, how you can see other movies by his production company, and you can reach out to him directly at No Restriction Studios on Twitter, and I believe his DMs are open.
Yes, they are.
John, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. God bless you, and God bless your audience. Thank you guys so much.
God bless you as well. We'll talk to you soon, friend.
All right.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I believe we have Nick and Sergeant. I'm sorry, that would be. Hang on, I don't know who is who. I just had to change your phone numbers really quickly, guys. So, Nick, could you please speak so that I know who's who?
Yes, this is Nick here.
Nick, speak again for me, Nick.
Yeah, Sergeant Kotel's the other number.
Okay, so right here, Nick, I got it mixed up. So we're gonna rename. So here is Nick. Thank you for being here tonight, gentlemen. And Sergeant Kotel, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Okay. So let's get some background here for the audience. Nick, you had emailed me because you had a role to play in Benghazi several years ago, and you wanted to let me know about the idea of Operation Red October, something that I think a lot of people were hoping was something that was going to take place. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then we can get background on Sergeant Kotel as well.
Sure. My name's Nick Noe, and I was in the Air Force, and I worked at an Air and Space Operations Center, the 603rd AOC in Ramstein, Germany. And there we had, within our AOR, AFRICOM and EUCOM. And my job was in combat operations. I was the combat report cell, and essentially the entire facility where I worked is a weapons system, and it's the nervous system per se of the warfighting effort. So from there, all we had subordinate units that reported to us, and then they were our assets. Yeah.
All right. So basically, you were firsthand witness to the idea that the U.S. government did not want to intervene in Libya, leading to the direct death of American citizens, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's awful. Sergeant Kotel, what can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I was working at CENTCOM at the time in the Army. I was in the watch floor, early warning and indication floor. And actually, my guys that worked for me had to work for AFRICOM as well, because it was a newly established command, and they didn't have a lot of things set up. So we had to do a lot of intelligence for them, intelligence gathering. We also had to push intelligence to and receive from NATO as well in regards to Libya and some of the areas that AFRICOM was dealing with at that time. We also dealt with intelligence for about, I would say, almost 6 months prior to Benghazi attacks for AFRICOM.
So did you guys have intel on Benghazi, like in the lead up to it? Were you aware that something was going to be taking place on that day?
Absolutely. We were receiving reports from human intelligence and from signals intelligence and other intelligence sources for many months before Benghazi took place, as far as an attack went on 9/11/2012. During that time period, we were pushing that information forward, not just to AFRICOM and to NATO, but to other forces that were on the ground. And the State Department also worked alongside with us as far as going back and forth with information and intelligence. So they were well aware of it. Leading up to Benghazi, about 2 weeks prior to the attacks happening, we saw a rise in very credible intelligence that would signal in what we described as like a checkbox, which is a box that says either key personnel, like key leaders that are in Benghazi, especially the ambassador, are to be removed from that area, and there should be an increase in security. And as these intelligence reports kept coming in, we noticed that these reports got a little bit more damning as we got closer to that date. And instead of security increasing, security decreased. And the ambassador did not leave country, neither did other key personnel. They actually stayed in place, which is against usually regulation on how to handle security protocols for senior U.S. personnel.
It seems pretty strange from a civilian point of view. Can you think of any reason why they would completely ignore all of that intelligence and then make direct actions to put these people's lives in risk?
I can't think of any reason. I can't give it because I wasn't in the leadership roles to say whether they stay or go, why security was lessened instead of increased. I can't say anything factually because that's all I can speak to. But I can say that those check boxes that needed to be ticked for basically a commander's critical intent requirement, they would have had to have been removed, and they were not. And insecurity was supposed to be increased, and it was not. So I understand that our protocols that we follow were not followed for the lead up to Benghazi, and then afterwards the attacks of Benghazi. which no one could understand that. I mean, all we could do is put in a request, and say what's going on, and we never get responses to that.
That was my next question. Did anybody ask higher ups what the heck was going on?
I know at our level we did. I know that it was pushed forward, but after it left our level and it moved higher, I can't say who said what or what orders were issued or what orders weren't followed. I can't say for that, reasoning, but I know the lead up had a lot of good intelligence information, very corroborated intelligence information that said increase security and remove key personnel. That's a fact.
All right. Real quick, guys, I just need to give a couple of thank yous. Elise said, thank you for all the hard work you do. Planning on seeing President Trump in Minnesota this week. That's probably going to be a lot of fun. B. Dank says, what's up, Red Pill? Signing in from Palm Springs, Southern California. Keep on vaping, bro. I know I will. I certainly will. So during the attack, I'm not really clear on how direct the information is that you guys are getting. You say AFRICOM, CENTCOM. I imagine, like a war room with a bunch of monitors and electronic equipment and, lots of hustle and bustle, people coming and going, phone calls, people on computers. Is that what it's like?
Let me explain to you that. I apologize about the acronyms.
Sure.
And, I didn't mean to cut you off, Nick. I'm sorry, but
It's okay.
AFRICOM, which means African Command, they controlled Libya and all parts of Africa. And what you have is you have a large coordinated group of individuals. Some deal with intelligence, some deal with operational aspects, some deal with support, some deal with monitors, some deal with UAV assets. It's a huge conglomerate of people in one large room that you would consider to be the early warnings and indications room. And in that room, you have all these monitors, as you described, and you have a lot of information and intelligence being pushed and pulled from other groups like NATO, like AFRICOM. African Command or AFRICOM was not fully established for the lead up to the Benghazi attacks during 2012. So my group at the watch board, CENTCOM, or Central Command, which we cover the Middle Eastern AOR, we had to cover down on that. And that's what we did. And we also had to link into the NATO network and deal with the NATO allies, pushing and pulling intelligence information from them as well. So it was a large consortium of people, obviously, gathering information, putting it down into some semblance of, understanding so that it can be put into a report for commanders to view and hire so they can make informed and good decisions.
All right.
Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. So you've got all this information coming in, and then I imagine you have to push it out to other people, and then you're just sitting there and you have to wait for your orders to come in. What was it like knowing that there's an attack taking place, knowing that you had the ability to foresee it in the run up to it, and then knowing that they were going to allow those people to die?
Well, Nick, do you mind if I start, or do you want to?
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll finish up. I'll come around the back.
Okay. What I have to say is a little bit hard to understand, but during 9/11 of 2012, 75% of Central Command was in what's called a training exercise. The training exercise was known as Internal Look 12. So 75% of us were at work during that evening. When the attacks began in Benghazi, Libya, simultaneously, our embassy in Cairo, Egypt was overrun. During that time period, we were not allowed to stop the training exercise. We had been told through different commanders running through the floors to continue the training exercise, and that the State Department had it under control. We were advised that the Morsi Brotherhood was involved with the attacks in Cairo, Egypt, against the embassy, basically breaking in. And we were trying to allow the Morsi government to regain control, according to the State Department, sending word through our commanders telling us on the floor. And as far as Benghazi goes, we were told that other elements and other units would handle it. And then we were eventually told the State Department had it under control. But we never got to stop the training exercise. And in 24 years of service, I've never seen that happen, not even once.
Why is it?
So it was very...
Why is it that every time something like this happens, there's a training exercise going on? I mean, I have an idea, but I'd like to hear it from you guys, having been in the military.
Well, this is just for Central Command, and I'll give you a construct or an example. In 1992, I was with the 101st Airborne, and we were at a place called the Joint Training Readiness Center, or JRTC, and it was at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. And that particular training exercise, some guy, some sheikh, decided that he was going to go ahead and bomb the Twin Towers in New York City with a van.
Yep.
As soon as that took place, we stopped the training exercise. We turned in all our blank and training ammunition. We stood ready by what we call PZ posture, with a bunch of helicopters standing by and live ammo ready to go to war. That's exactly what took place. If you translate that to 2012, during the Benghazi attacks, we were not allowed to stop a training exercise. Matter of fact, we didn't stop it for 8.5 hours after the attacks began.
In 2001, wasn't there also a training exercise going on, and wasn't there at least several hours of confusion where people weren't aware of what was real and what was the training exercise? That's
correct. They didn't know whether it was real world or exercise. That's based upon what I've heard from the actual radio transmissions.
Yeah. I find it interesting. In 2012, again, there's another training exercise, and they don't allow people to stop. It seems like stopping something like that could have, helped people figure out what's going on and, maybe rally the troops a little bit quicker.
Well, a lot could have been done at that time.
We had plenty of assets all over Europe and Africa, completely covered. We had air, land, and sea covering it everywhere. We had pararescue teams. We had F-16s, F-15s. We had drones. We had special forces. We even had Marines nearby. And everyone was basically stopped from doing anything. And, everybody there, for example, the pararescue team that we had that for AFRICOM and an asset, they're ready to go 24 hours a day. And if they have anything wrong, their plane's not working, someone's sick or on vacation, we know about it. Everything was good to go, and all they had to do was leave and go there, and then they can come into even a very a firefight. Even they can drop in, parachute in, set up a perimeter, and that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're there for. And then we also had a ship that was in the Mediterranean, and they had a fast team, and then also Marine Force Recon. And then we also had the regular infantry there too, and they could have invaded the country for all intents and purposes. All right, so that's the issue here. We had everything. We had the intelligence leading up to it. We had all the assets that were there, and nothing was done. The State Department had it, I guess. That's what happened.
Not only that, though, there were NATO allies available too, and they offered assistance. There were some on the ground already there, and there were some at sea. And we were told the State Department declined that request for assistance. They wanted to help our guys on the ground. They had people there. And what Nick didn't tell you is that Nick also had a drone in the air at the time, and that drone was armed with Predators and with the Hellfire missiles on a Predator. So we could have easily taken out mortar targets and other things, which didn't happen either.
This, under my speculation and conjecture, it sounds to me like someone wanted those guys to die. Considering the overwhelming numbers that you guys had at your disposal and the means to have helped them, gotten them out of there before that happened, it seems pretty obvious that this was a high-level operation to make sure that those guys didn't make it out. Now, I've had a lot of people in the audience saying that this was a gun-running operation. I don't know if you guys have any information about that, or if you've heard that from anybody in the years since it took place. But this is a theory that I've heard quite often, is that Hillary Clinton and the State Department were involved with running missiles through Libya. I believe that they were going to people in the Middle East, other bad actors. And that for some reason, maybe they were there in the embassy. Maybe Christopher Stevens was working with the clowns in America, and they were overrun. Maybe that there was also some type of a computer server there with some information on it. Heard a couple of different things.
Nick,
I do know for sure that they got. This is what was going on. So if that was going on, General Valley has verified that there were weapons going through there that were outside of the ones we already provided. during that time, we actually provided weapons from a weapons cache that was supposed to go over to Syria that never made it over there. And so basically, we provided all the weapons they would have needed, and there would be no reason to run weapons through there otherwise. So what were they doing if they were doing that? And supposedly, as General Valley has said, he said, you need to talk to Marty Tory if you'd like to know what was going on with those weapons and where they were going.
Marty Tory, that's the Mad Hatter from Hillary's emails. Q talked about that.
That's correct. I think that's linked to that. I've read that information, but I think that maybe you could try and get in contact with him and see if he would like to explain to you what was going on there. In regards to the other weapons, like I said, they had the weapons that we were already providing the weapons, and they never got over there. They ended up in the wrong hands, apparently. And there's no real explanation for why that happened and who ended up getting those into the wrong hands. So that's a good question to have answered. We just don't have the answer to that.
I'm gonna see if I can find some information on that. Marty Tory.
Sir, I think what we're trying to do is get you the facts.
Please.
Of what took place, and then after that, we would like to go over how we handled the situation when things went wrong, and then after that, we can discuss what the next course of action is. Because I'm trying to keep myself and Nick into the factual report, but the guns and all that are a very interesting aspect of it. But really, there needs to be more factual evidence, and General Valley does have that information.
Okay.
We
can go there at a later time.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
All right.
But going back to the attack times, after the attacks were completed, we do what's called reflections. We look at and listen into everybody after the attack, see who's talking about it. We had a very good idea of who had that information about the attacks before, during, and after. We also had a lot of intelligence supporting that from signals, phone interceptions and others, as well as human intelligence from people on the ground. And we also had eyes in the sky talking about movements of different groups and different factions that were within that vicinity at the time. After that, a lot of that information was stockpiled and was told that we had to give that information in for evidential review, I would say plus 26 hours after the attacks began and ended. Later on, after it was discovered that the Benghazi committees were formed under Trey Gowdy, in 2014, I provided a roadmap to recovering that information. That information revolves around only facts and evidence, which would be the human intelligence reports leading up to, during, and after, signals intelligence report, global command and control system, affectionately known as the GEEK system, showing where all assets were, land, sea, and air, at that time throughout the attacks. And it would have given an actual factual historical view of what they wanted, to be able to prosecute anybody or to go after anybody that committed wrongdoings. When I gave this information to the Benghazi committee through the Trey Gowdy Republican side, I was told they didn't want it. They didn't want any of it. I also was told when I called the Democratic side, they didn't want any of it. I was called by one of their investigators that advised me that they were not looking for those factual and evidentiary pieces of information. They just wanted to get this over with and done. I also tried to provide this information to various congressmen and senators, Kathy Castor being one of them, Senator Rubio being another, and others, FBI and IG, and they all refused to deal with it. Matter of fact, Department of Defense IG told me they weren't interested in it, and they sent me a letter saying, there's no case here, this is closed matter. And this made no sense at the time because this was not the true closure that was required. This was not what needed to be heard. The facts and the evidence still exist to this day. And another piece of this is that soldiers and government employees are all sworn under oath. And part of that oath is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, as well as to ensure that people that are in harm's way are given every amount of effort to be rescued, saved, or their remains recovered. Anybody that's able to do that and fails to do it, they're dereliction of duty and they're in violation of their oath. And under military law, that is a crime. So somewhere along the line, people were told to stand down and don't do this and don't do that. Those are unlawful orders. You're not bound to follow those. So we had tried to use the Benghazi matter to go ahead and breach some information to the President of the United States and to respectfully request that he communicates through the Department of Defense to get some of these people, call them on the carpet, and find out why they refused to go in and rescue, who gave those orders, and hold some of them accountable and charge them. The reason being is because if you look at today, the President is involved with a large amount of obstructionists within this United States government. So he can't even issue a direct order and have it followed from himself down to the person executing it, because there are so many people in that chain that are obstructionists. This type of event would help remove those obstructionists.
Did you guys see what happened today or maybe yesterday? I'm going to send this to you in the chat so you guys can check it out. It's an order for the Marines to be active on American soil in Washington, D.C.
Did not see that, no, sir.
I'm wondering if this ties into Operation Red October.
Well, I saw that. I saw that from the posting. I can't remember. Let me see. What exactly was the website? Does it say at the end of .com, or I think it was Marines, actually from the military.
It's marines.mil. Yeah, if you check the chat in Zoom, I just sent it to you there. It's also on my Twitter. And I suppose that intentionally foregoing your oath to protect the laws and the citizens of the United States, there's no statute of limitations on that, right?
There are none. You are correct, sir.
So they can still pay for it. I'd like to think that is very close to taking place, but that's me speculating there.
It wouldn't take much for the president to issue an executive order to request all the data that wasn't used in any of the committees. Even though people may think it's destroyed, the data actually gets archived to what's called the digital data ball. There's a human intelligence ball, a signals intelligence ball. There's also a geeks ball. All these data balls have these archived data, and it was the same for the State Department. And the reason why is because we should be able to have an archive to look back on to see what happened when, so we can either effectively train people or avoid situations in certain, theaters of operation around the world. These data balls can still be accessed, and the people that are responsible for whatever actions were taken back then are still around. They need to be questioned before things go wrong, and they wind up getting out of things, or they don't get charged at all. Some of these people do need to be charged, though, sir. And that's the whole point. This would help the president in removing these obstructionists, getting them out of his hair. So that when he issues an order, for example, to ICE and says, I want all illegal immigrant aliens to be arrested that are criminals, aliens. And all of a sudden, the guy executing is going to some poor Sergeant Garcia or someone else's house that served in the U.S. Army for 5 years, been deployed to Afghanistan twice, and they're deporting him and his family. So obviously, somewhere between the president and the people executing that order, somebody changed something. And it obviously is to make the president look bad.
Yeah, definitely. Gentlemen, I am so sorry. My trackpad ran out of juice. I have to run out of my office to grab a wire to connect it manually. So I will be right back. If one of you wants to talk to the audience just for a brief moment, I'll be back in like 10 seconds.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. So sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay.
No problem, sir.
Normally I've got an extra one sitting here. I don't know what happened. My daughter must have grabbed it. Okay.
And I wanted to add in there too. Whenever Will was talking about an obstructionist, he also, he didn't name all the names of the people there that he had went to. I wanted to say on the air now that I went to Susan Brooks here on the north side of Indianapolis, where I'm from, because she's on the Benghazi committee, and that was after Trump got elected. Because at that point, I felt safe and that it'd be okay for me to come forward. And then it was right around the same time. It was right, I think it was right after James Comey had been fired because he tried to start a soft coup, right?
Right.
And so I figured everything's good to go. I went over there to talk to her. I called. I went to her office and I sent her an email. And then finally, her chief of staff called me, and her chief of staff immediately tells me that that investigation's over, and basically that they were not interested in talking about it anymore. And then I said, I have more information for you, and that's why I came to you, because you're on the Benghazi committee. And then they said, I'm going to refer you to the Benghazi report. The woman, the chief of staff, recited the URL perfectly, almost as if she had it memorized by heart. And she says, oh, here's the URL. And then it said, why don't you read that report and tell me whether or not, you have more information. I said, no, listen, you trust me, you don't have this information. Otherwise, it would be all over the news. And then she said, and then I sounded concerned, and then she's like, "Oh well, why don't you call the FBI then?" And I said, I paused for a minute, and thinking, I can't believe this person just said that to me instead of talking to me. And then she didn't even ask me what the information was. She just basically tried to dismiss me and then shoo me away. So she said, "Oh, why don't you call the FBI then?" And you know what? I ended up calling the FBI. I called her bluff. I called them. But guess what? FBI gave them all my information. Name, address, everything, and all they had to do was look me up in Office of Personnel Management. They could look me up, know where I worked, when I worked there, and then I would have information for them. And then they never called me back. And it's been years. Yeah.
That's incredible. I have to think that these people are just so adjusted to all this corruption that's been taking place for so many decades. It's just business as usual. I think people are they expect that Hillary Clinton's going to continue to get away with her crimes. These people, it's not politically advantageous for them at this point to continue to look into Benghazi. And I think that they're thinking about it in terms of political equations, like what's going to get me reelected? Will bringing up Benghazi get me reelected? Well, no, maybe that's not necessarily going to get you a couple of points in the polls, but if you can avenge the deaths of some Americans who it wasn't necessary for them to die, then I think that obviously it's a worthwhile endeavor. I do need to say thank you to the audience. First of all, Crystal Lynn, she said, don't read this while you're talking, but this is for having guests on, knowing you will get demonetized and doing it anyway. Thank you very much, Crystal Lynn. I appreciate the support. Guido Congetti, thank you for that. A Pool, thank you for that as well. Micah D2 said, Marines were activated by because the deep state wanted to stop the Joker movie. Trump has control of the Marines. It was thwarted again. Apparently there was this narrative that there was going to be violence breaking out at the Joker movie. I saw it on Thursday night with my daughter. I just want to say, go see that movie, you guys. It's a great movie, whether you like comic books or not. Also, number 2. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was the person who just told me to read my super chats. Read my super chats. Who was that? That was... Doesn't say who it was. All right. Sorry. Thank you for that, guys. I needed to get those in. Thank you for the audience as well. So you guys have, you haven't sat on this information. You've attempted to go and take it to people, and it's been kind of to no avail at this point for the aforementioned reasons that I suggested. But what is the next step here with this?
The next step is to ask the president respectfully to do an executive order to request all the data from the 9th through the 13th of that September of 2012, so that he himself can read the data. And once he does, he can see who gave what orders, and he can see what assets were where, and he can see what intelligence reports came in, what signals reports came in. So it's not like overwhelming. And then he can effectively call a lot of these people on the carpet. I mean, some of these people were very senior in the military. Some of them are still in, some retired, and they went to other agencies, or they opened their own contracting companies that do business currently with the U.S. government for contracts. But they're still very powerful, within the government aspects. Now, if they're called on the carpet and some of these people are held accountable, and that doesn't mean just, a slap on the wrist, but that means, exposing, dishonorable discharge or even charging criminally is required, because you have 3 factors in this whole mess that nobody's taken into account. Number 1, you have the fallen in the families that got no closure, and they're still fighting to this day to get that. Number 2, you have soldiers and service members that were on duty, that knew all about what was going on and were not able to perform any duties to effectively save or help or even enhance the survival rate of those on the ground. And they live with this guilt. Some of them have done some, things with turning to the bottle or drugs, or with, just survivor's guilt, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've been extremely affected by this. And number three, we really have to get the obstructionists out of government. Now, since that time from Benghazi to today, some of them are still here, and they're much more powerful than they were back then.
Right.
They have no right to do that. They violated the oath. That's what every service member and everyone that takes the oath for the United States government in any capacity does. They need to follow their oaths. Violation of that oath is a crime, and it needs to be addressed as one. And this could remove these obstructionists and get some kind of justice and closure for a lot of folks, and also allow the president to issue orders that are followed through the way he issues them, not because somebody in the middle wants to change it.
Nick, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, that was spot on. Essentially, that was one of my major concerns. That's why I waited till I got out of the military to say anything, because the same people who actually, had let them die or purposely chose to make sure that they died were still in power. And that's why I could not say anything. I actually, my second base, I didn't really hardly talk to anybody because I was afraid I would say something. And when I got out, I felt like it was okay. And then, the people in Congress give me the cold shoulder, and so does the FBI. And these people are supposed to be protecting and serving us. And they're not doing that. What are they doing?
Just somebody in the chat had asked who was on the show. It is Sergeant William Kotel and Nick Noe, both gentlemen who had firsthand information in regards to what happened in Benghazi. And also we're going to be talking about Operation Red October, which is something that I hope is on the way right now or has already been implemented. So how do we get this to President Trump? Are you guys going to start like an organized campaign so that maybe like one of those petitions asking people to sign in and asking him to create this executive order?
We've been trying to send material up to the White House, which has been effectively blocked. Right now, the media is the best outlet. Everybody who listens in on these shows like yours just needs to try to contact the White House, contact IGs, contact the congressmen and senators in their districts. Take that couple of minutes. You can do it online. Let them know that this needs to be open so it can be properly closed. This was an ineffective job by the United States government to get closure to an incident that didn't have to happen. And even though it happened, it shouldn't have gone to the level of loss of life. It's ridiculous to think that could not have been fixed, stopped, or immediately dealt with right there when the first shots were fired. So this does need to be out there and do that, because when people join the military in the United States government, or they join the FBI or other agencies, they have an expectation and a right that they're going to be supported by their chain of command, that they're not going to be left floundering in a situation like our people were in Benghazi. And that, God forbid, but if they did die, that their remains would be recovered and proper burial would be given. They have a right to expect that. The families have a right to expect closure, to know that their family members that lost their lives have done so in good faith for the United States government and for the safety of the people here. Not for some, half-baked mission where they're just left and forgotten and just totally thrown aside. I mean, the committees, they really did nothing. They didn't present any facts or any evidence. They went around everything. They, tap dance all over this thing. One other point I'd like to make, if I could, is that there was another issue going on at that time. This was the re-election time for President Barack Obama. During that time period, when he killed Osama bin Laden, at CENTCOM, we were not allowed to report basically on most of the Sunni attacks that were conducted. And there was a big problem with that. I wrote up a lot of reports. A lot of other people wrote up a lot of reports about it. And then things came out in the news later on about that, which you can go back to Fox News or CNN and others in 2014 and 15. But that was a huge problem. And at that same time, we also had the incidents going on in Syria, which was getting crazy. And in Iraq, the Iraqi government turned from Sunni Shia mixed to total Shia and Iranian-backed dominance. And they were fueling the wars in Syria. And it was getting really hectic there. We had Iraq under control, and then it went out of control. The country of Egypt went nuts and became a Shia dominant through the Muslim Brotherhood country. And General al-Sisi decided, no, it's not going to stay this way because we can't operate like that. And he took the country back by force. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of things that were going on during that 2011, 12, and especially 13 time period. And Benghazi was one key piece of that because that was holding information between two different combatant commands, areas of operation. And it was the loss of a U.S. ambassador, which is extreme. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that were happening all at once in this whole theater of operations and this whole time. I mean, we lost control of Iraq. We lost control of Yemen. We lost control, obviously, of our embassy in Egypt and the country of Egypt. We lost control of Benghazi and the Libyan fold. We lost a lot. There was no reason for that. So Benghazi is just a means to an end for the president to understand that he can hold some of these people accountable that played along with following unlawful orders.
All right. Well, we've got almost 4,000 people watching tonight. I think this would be a great start if everybody would go ahead and do that. Contact the White House, contact your congressman, flood people with this request, and also put it on Trump's Twitter as well. Quickly, Ben Schwagel, I want you to ask them if they know anything about serpent seed. Tell them it's from a current active duty Army soldier. This is Ben Schwagel's pet subject. Have you ever heard of the concept of the serpent seed?
No, sir.
No.
Okay, thank you. It's okay if you haven't. Next, Red Pill Doc says, remember how Trump had to go over in person to get ISIL attacked? I do remember that. Lisa Hagen said, have they tried to get this info to Judicial Watch? Judicial Watch has an active Benghazi case ongoing. Also, there is a consolidated text of this info, or is there a consolidated text of this info so that we can get it to our reps?
Consolidated text. Yeah.
Like, is there any type of like online presentation of this interview, or is the only documentation just you guys and your interviews trying to get the word out?
No, actually, I have my copy of my documentation for what I sent to the committee via email and a response, and I'd be happy to send that to you. And that's what I was using as my forte to go forward with the information I had. More than that, and remember, there's a lot of this that's classified we can't discuss, but it really does signal a lot more information than what we're talking about.
Whatever you can get to me that I can disseminate publicly, please do. And for everyone listening in the audience, what I'll do is I will upload it into a file sharing service, and then I will put it in the link of this video, in the description, of this video, so that anybody who shares this video can also get to that document with ease. And let's see. So now let's say that if we get President Trump to do that, then, perhaps we get to see a resolution to everything that took place with Benghazi. That would be excellent. What's the next move after that?
To hold 3 or 4 as a minimum senior personnel accountable, charge them criminally, and let it be public. The reason you're doing that is because you shut down a lot of underlings that are still leftovers in the government. It'll send a widespread message. It'll give families closure and allow people to see that justice still exists in the United States. And you would definitely put to rest some of the people that are holding the guilt in that were unable to act that evening.
I think that would go a long way towards restoring the public's view of the country, because I think a lot of people, even the most optimistic, such as myself, are kind of looking around and seeing what's happening, and it's difficult to imagine that we're still living in the same country as what we grew up in, because the people who do the most terrible things are not the people who are being punished.
That's true. That's very true.
I'm really tired of seeing that too.
We need to see a return to the rule of law here in America, and I think that you're absolutely right. Some high-level prosecutions and some public executions are something that would really, really help out a lot of people. Crystal Lynn says it would work for me, and I know that. I think it would. I think it's what a lot of people need.
I mean, just imagine this. I mean, you know, senior people are able to do a lot of things, like get away with, in essence, letting people die, which is tantamount to murder. And lesser people are going to jail for much smaller crimes or much less crimes. I mean, how do you justify, you know, the fact that they want to say, why is it fair that I go to jail, but these people do not? You know, is it a money issue? Is it a prestige issue? Is it a who you know issue? No. You know, and that's not the right way to go about it. The law is the law, and no one's above it.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, I think that the way that a lot of prosecutors work, they're prosecuting for particular numbers. They're looking to hit metrics, and if they can let off some pretty big fish who've got money, power, and prestige, while at the same time prosecuting a bunch of, you know, lesser people who don't have access to quality legal representation, perhaps have a lower socioeconomic status or education level, maybe don't understand when they're being railroaded on some charges, you know, or people who are just flat out, you know, completely framed for crimes, because I mean that happens quite often. You know, I think that they're doing it that way because they want to have the appearance of some type of, you know, equal justice here in the country. As long as people are being charged and being pushed through the legal system, they can still say that it works. But I mean, every single day we hear about a different politician or you know, a different banker who commits some awful crimes that have, you know, far-reaching and long-lasting ramifications on millions of people, and absolutely nothing happens to them, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's disgusting. All right, well, tell us about Operation Red October, guys.
Go ahead.
Well, that's just what we're doing here. We're trying to make sure that we get accountability for all the people that have committed these, you know, these crimes, especially with Benghazi, and how, you know, no one's been held accountable. Even to this day, nobody has been held accountable. Not one person, any of it. And you know, there are so many questions that are left unanswered. And the whole reason I even started doing this is I saw an interview on YouTube with Dave Janda and Charles Woods. And after seeing him go on there and talk about how he was lied to at every turn, he has no idea what really happened to his son. I had to get in contact with him. I had to tell him the truth. I had to tell him that it was not just, I don't believe that it was just negligence. There's no way that there's just somebody that was negligent and incompetent. That's not what happened there. And the people who did this to them need to be held accountable. They need justice. The families need justice.
It seems fairly obvious that there was quite a sophisticated level of premeditation to all of this. I mean,
well, I can tell you that security being decreased when threat reports are going up, that's a problem. Kind of answers your question or your statement that you're making.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. I think my daughter just got home and the dog's freaked out. Yeah, that's counterintuitive to think that you guys would be getting reports that there is danger coming, and then for the order to come down that we're just going to drop security and we're going to call off anybody that could actually help. We've had a lot of people in the audience asking how they can get a hold of you gentlemen. Do you have a means of communication that people could reach out to you, like a Twitter profile, Facebook, anything like that, email address?
I believe
Nick,
that
you can answer that.
You probably want to use have them write to you, but also General Vallely, he started the Citizens Commission for Benghazi, and it's now you can email him if you have any questions. I suppose go to his website. It's called Stand Up for America USA, I believe now. And yeah, if you Google him, and if it's not exactly right, like I said, then you can Google him and you'll find his website and get in contact with him. He also has a lot more information, and if you really wanted to get in contact with us specifically, I would go through you, sir. Then that way, if there's any specific requests, or or if there's somebody, this is something else that we could use too. There could be other people that were involved as well, that were in the command structure, that know what really happened, and if they work there and they're listening, and they've been waiting for this moment, you call in or call you or email, and that way we can get connected, because the more people we have, the better. We've got another an airman, Joshua Salmon, I used to work with, and he worked inside the SCIF, the Secure Compartmentalized Information Facility. It was built into the combat operations room in there. So anyway, the more people we have that were working in the command structures during that time that have information, please contact Red Pill 78, please.
And I should say, guys, I know someone who may be able to get you to Judicial Watch, directly to Tom Fitton. So I would be happy to try and help facilitate that, because I really do think that Judicial Watch is doing, some of the most important work in terms of bringing this stuff to light. Certainly with Benghazi, with Hillary's emails, with a lot of stuff with this coup that's been trying to get rid of President Trump since before he was even in office. They've brought a lot of really good information to the forefront. Now, I was able to find the Citizens Commission on National Security. Is that General Vallely's? Is that associated with General Vallely?
Yes, I think that's it. Actually, that's
okay.
Right.
It's changed to that now. But he can be reached at Stand Up America. You can see him on Facebook and on regular websites. And I believe the reason we're funneling it through General Vallely is he's tried to collate as much information as he could to produce this back when the hearings were going on.
Right.
And he's still continuing to try to push this agenda forward. And again, the reason this agenda is important is because of two facts that we discussed earlier, one of which is the closure and helping those that have been suffered through this, that were military. And the second part of this is to help the president alleviate the government of some of the obstructionists. And that's kind of the twofold mission on this. We want to make that happen. And I mean, he's still the commander in chief and he's doing the job, and it's not right that people, within that chain somewhere continue to screw his orders up intentionally to make him look bad. And this Benghazi piece is very important because there was never any real closure. So we have a means to an end to get this accomplished. And like I said, it doesn't take but a quick executive order. It's out of his hands for about 30 days. And then when it's back in his hands, then you have people hold him accountable. They get to speak their piece, and then they get charged and move out. And that's it.
Absolutely. It could all be taken care of with a simple stroke of the pen. So just for everyone's information, I've put the General Vallely's website, two websites, Stand Up for America and Citizens Commission on National Security. Those have both gone into the description box. They've also gone into the chat box. And then go ahead and go directly through General Vallely on there, guys, because, he's got actually, I'm on his website right here. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that real quick. And it says right here, Red October operations target the deep state. Red October operations have begun to support our president, defend the Constitution, and to eliminate the deep state. I mean, it's in the end, it's all about draining the swamp, isn't it, guys?
Yes. And like Will was saying, the obstructionists, these people are career, and all they do is they have their own agenda, and they don't do what they're ordered to do, and everything. For example, like you talked about earlier, it's plain to see that there is a soft coup occurring this entire presidency. And it's very plain to see, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that. All right. And it's not just obstructionists. They are trying everything they can, and they seem very desperate for some reason to do that. And they're not doing what's best for America. And I think that they need to be held accountable too,
I absolutely agree. I just need to do a couple of quick thank yous here, Nick. Exploding Pumpkin Production says, give us the docs, please. Yes, you can has the docs when we're done here. I will make sure to get them into the description box. Ben Schwagel says that I should direct you gentlemen to watch the previous interview that I did just before you came on with John Paul Rice. It was a great interview, and to watch the whole video here when it's done. John produced a film called The Child's Voice. It's a supernatural thriller about drug use, and I mean lightly about drug use, but mostly about child trafficking. It's a powerful film. And then Lady Warrenon says, do any of these murders fall under war crimes? Do any of the crimes committed during the Benghazi incident, that wouldn't count as war crimes, would it?
Any crime that was committed during any action is under war crimes actions. If it's combative action against the United States government, United States assets, United States personnel.
So if it was found that there was intent to make decisions that would result in these Americans' deaths, then that's what it would be? Because it would be a direct action that way.
If it was U.S. personnel that made the decisions, as we just discussed, to not rescue, then that would be under federal law. Those are federal felonies under, treason acts and other acts.
Okay.
If it's foreign nationals, they'd be under the War Crimes Act.
Okay. Thank you for that distinction. And then Barbara Heath says, get with Field McConnell at Able Danger. Have you guys spoken with Field McConnell?
I don't know who he is, sir.
He's another YouTuber. Go ahead, Nick.
He's a veteran, isn't he? He's a veteran, isn't he? I've heard of him.
He is. And I think he would love to have you guys on. He's got a very enthusiastic audience. I'll be happy to help make that introduction after the show because I think that you guys should definitely speak with him. Then Tanette Booth says, possession 24 months, rape 18 months. Why? Yeah, it's kind of an imbalanced justice system that we've got here.
It goes along with the intent of what the government says is priorities.
Mm-hmm.
If drugs are the priorities, that has a higher penalty. Same thing with the rape and other things. But it should just basically be following the law. The law sets a standard. We don't have to keep monkeying with it and add to or take away from the law. It's pretty simple. I mean, go to this whistleblower garbage that went on with the president just recently. This whistleblower is second and third hand knowledge. Under the Whistleblower Protection Act, the law states it must be direct or coronal knowledge in order to be afforded whistleblower protection status. But that does not include privy conversations between the president and foreign leaders. And if it does, and they're going to say that there's a new law that says it does, he still is not a credible witness, having given hearsay, and he's not entitled to whistleblower protections. So that means that he should be charged with espionage. It's a crime. I don't care how it looks in the media or how it looks to other people. It's pretty much black and white. Why I try to just stick with the facts and evidence of stuff as opposed to making conjecture or what the will of the people are. The will of the people may not understand what the law is or all the ins and outs of what this person did or didn't do. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I absolutely agree with you. President Trump has even said publicly that this was a spy. What's even more obvious about it is that the two stenographers that wrote down the call were from the Clowns in America. The whistleblower themselves is a clown agent. It reeks of an operation coming straight out of Langley. And then you've also got the coordination with Adam Schiff and other Democratic members of Congress in the lead up to it. You have Adam Schiff going to the Ukraine, tweeting about some outrage, some faux outrage regarding the president and Ukraine, and then the intelligence, the ICIG, changes the paperwork that the day before this whistleblower brings the third-hand information, which was delivered from somebody at the Clowns in America.
But you can't change the law. Okay, the law says specifically must be direct or coronal knowledge of.
Right.
Okay, that's the law. You can't add to it and say, yeah, we can just go with hearsay on this.
Right.
I mean, in what court, in what any place do you allow that? That's ridiculous. I mean, that means you could just make a phone call on somebody you don't even know and say that this guy did all this stuff because I heard it through the grapevine, and this guy goes to jail for 20 years. I mean, what a travesty that would be. This is the same thing. It's ridiculous.
So what do you think they're trying to do? Do you think that they're I guess assuming that people in the government are going to be stupid enough to just fall for this, or is it that the American public will just fall for it, or the media will fall for it? Because like you said, you can't change the law. All they did was just change the paperwork. They just changed the language on the paperwork.
It's designed to enrage the American people to say, oh my God, he committed some kind of act here. We have to go ahead and impeach him. And because the media and all the loudmouths, which is a very small percentage, control the media, they're able to tout their message and make him look guilty. The problem is the president, in my humble opinion, is not executing his authority over responsible media. When media creates things like riots or tensions or causes crimes to be committed, they are to be held accountable because they incited that. No one's holding the media accountable. How can they not be held accountable for doing things? I mean, you have to think about the last 6-7 years of what the media has stated and look at the cause and effect. So the media goes out and runs their mouth about, this is unfair, this is unjust, and we agree with that. And the next thing you know, you have these different named groups. I won't speak about the names of them because there's so many, going out and burning or breaking into cars or hitting normal people, that are either Trump supporters or others. But the media is not being charged and held accountable for their actions. And that has to be done. If you're not going to be responsible in the media, then you need to be charged or moved out of the media. That's ridiculous to continue to have this type of thing going.
I absolutely agree.
Insurrection.
I tend to think that the reason it's happening and they're not being held accountable is because we have a lot of intelligence assets who are actually journalists, and it's all part of the operation. Listen, guys, we're actually out of time. We're at the top of the hour, so I do want to give you both the opportunity to have any final thoughts or anything that you want to say to the audience.
Well, I just want to remind them, please contact anybody. Contact your friends, your church members, your community goers, whoever, congressmen, senators, whatever you can do. But at the same time, I did want to make sure that if you could, sir, send me an email so I can send you that document that I sent to Congress.
Yes, I actually sent you an email earlier, so just respond to the one that I sent you, and then I'll check my email after I take the dogs for a walk.
That's the same email, no problem.
Yep, same email. And Nick.
Yes, and don't forget to write your congressman about, and then also at the White House to have that declassified. If they have the geek system, it's GCCS. If they have that declassified, that would show where all the assets were. And if they showed the SITREP, SITREP, if they have that declassified, that shows where all the assets were to include the naval ships. And then the commander update briefing, if they have that declassified.
Do me a favor, Nick. When you write to me, send me those instructions so that I can include those instructions in the description of the video so that people know exactly what to say.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being here. I want to have you guys back in the future. We will definitely do an update, and hopefully this is going to get some movement for us. We've got 4,000 people watching right now. So thank you to you guys. Thank you to my audience. Thank you to the last 2 Super Chats. Micah D says they are now holding them accountable. I think that they are, but it's just slow going. And Ben Schwagel just wanted to say that you guys should look into Serpent Seed, and then it will make sense afterwards. So we'll talk more about that off the air. So thank you to the audience. Thank you to all my mods. Thank you to everybody who donated. Remember, if you want to support the program, there's always links in the description of the video below. You can always like and share my videos, and that will help. If you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Make sure to share this video on all your favorite social media platforms after the show. So that's all I got for you tonight, guys. Thank you very much for being here. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pilled News for Saturday Night Livestream. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.